Okay, remember that they are changing my voice. This video is going to be part of a two-part series. In a sense, three parts, because there was a video I uploaded before this, which has everything to do with this video. And I'm going to be explaining to Donald Trump, rather to the people watching me on his behalf, and anyone else watching, why it is stupid to say that Somalia is a place with bad governance because of the people. Okay, that is a stupid argument to make. Now, the other day I went over a video for good measure to refresh myself about the various coups and activities that took place during the official years of the Cold War, when the Cold War never ended, mind you, which are from 1945 to 1991. Again, the Cold War also took place in 1991. Now, it never officially ended, and we know this for many reasons, right? China has a communist regime, okay, in basically a more or less capitalist country, and North Korea is communist, and Russia still kind of has some of that thinking there. They have some of some of the components of communism are very much alive and well in Russia, and their former communist allies, right, when they were the Soviet Union, what have you, are still around, right? They still have some kind of relationship with them for the most part. Now that has to do with why the Soviet Union collapsed and all this stuff. That's a whole bag of worms for another day. In this part, I'm just going to read you the first 4 or 5 lines or so from the video I watched. It's titled, "What Happened in Africa During the Cold War?" It's by the Armchair Historian. Now, I fact-checked this person on several of his facts, kind of randomly, anything that seemed to stick out more than other things. I said, was this guy actually the president? He was. Was this the date that Patrice Lumumba was assassinated? It was. And so on and so forth. So I'm going to go ahead and say that this person must be nearly completely right or completely right in terms of the agreed upon facts when it comes to the Cold War in Africa. So here it says, let me just read the first 4 lines or so from the video. We'll discuss it and we'll wrap it up here. And you'll see that already I'll have proven my point. So here we go, his words, not mine. It can sometimes be easy to forget the truly global nature of the Cold War. From Norway to Argentina, not a single political entity escaped the attention of these superpowers as they struggled for dominance between 1945 and 1991. An often overlooked theater of the Cold War is the continent of Africa, whose fate hung in the balance after a century of European dominance. In this video, we will focus on the impact of U.S. and Soviet political, economic, and military interventions in Africa, and how they affected the process of decolonization. So what is the video about? Okay, the video is about the Cold War in Africa, okay, which occurred after about a century of European dominance. And the focus of the video, right, is on the impact, again, the impact of U.S. and Soviet political, economic, and military interventions in Africa and how they affected the process of decolonization, right? Basically his exact words. How they affected the process of decolonization. So when Trump is saying, hey, these guys didn't produce anything, when? Back in the Stone Age? During European colonialism? When you look at Western history, basically the white man struck gold with gunpowder relative to making guns. Before the white man had gunpowder, he wasn't doing very much. Okay, he got his ass whipped in the Crusades, things of that nature. The Crusades he won, they started losing their land. The Moors cleaned the clock with the Europeans all throughout Europe, right? Spain and France at least. Okay. They were in bad shape. The Crusades were like a desperate attempt to maintain their relevance. Can you go from that, thousands and thousands of years of being kicked out of Africa, not fighting very well with all your armor and all your catapults and so on and so forth, crossbows, whatever the hell, okay, being very mediocre relative to the weapons you've had. And I'm not racist, I'm part white, I'm just kicking the ballistics here. So we're launching these desperate crusades that were a catastrophic failure and a complete embarrassment. And when the smoke cleared, the white man was gone out of the Middle East. Okay? Man, one day you strike gold with the gunpowder and the guns. And until that, you weren't doing a damn fucking thing. The Mongols were more successful, militarily speaking, than the Greeks or the Romans. And boy, were those empires, just unbelievably depraved. It's hard to say who's more depraved, the Mongols, or the Greeks, or the Romans, when we look at it from a historian's perspective as a non-biased observer or researcher. Pretty straightforward. So if you're talking about before the gun, you lose the argument, basically. You had little things here and there, like when, the Greeks and the Romans occupied Egypt, but a lot of other nations did before them because they had it more together than the Europeans. The Persians, the Assyrians, the Babylonians. Even before that, the Hittites. So it's like, what the hell are you talking about? The white man learned to have an empire from Egypt. Kush and Egypt were thriving empires before Greece and Rome. So how can those comments to Ilhan Omar seem to make sense to anybody? They don't. They're not logical. They're not fair. They're not the result of being an astute researcher, making sure that they have their facts correct. The comment suggests that the genetics of the Somalians are magically inferior to the white man. That's what they suggest. This is very interesting. But also by association, because, it suggests that any country that isn't developed, has, is full of people with inferior genes, at least if they're not from, these rather unfortunate developed nations that are the least morally qualified to govern the world. My goodness, look at their histories. Okay. That's very key there. So if you're talking about during colonialism, what the hell, right? That doesn't make any much sense. So you sneak attack these people with guns and you colonize them. Okay? And then when you're colonizing them and afterwards, really, you're keeping them out of the best colleges, right? There was a concerted effort to keep indigenous people from going to college, as they were trying to keep them from having a high social status. And as a result, the white man isn't exactly held in high esteem by the vast majority of people on the planet. The vast majority of people on the planet do not think that white people or Jews are superior. They do not think that their history proves that they're smarter than other people or they have better genes. They don't think that. A lot of people think Asians are smarter than white people. They think black people are more spiritual than white people. And when they consider obstacles and look at what black people have accomplished, quite often they think black people are the smartest race or smarter than white people, what have you. Pretty straightforward. If you have any questions about that, we'll go through it in the comments. I don't want to make this video about that. I'm not a racist, da-da-da. I'm a moral supremacist, not a racial supremacist. Now, in the next video, we're going to talk about the details a whole lot more. We're going to talk about Charles de Gaulle, Patrice Lumumba. We're going to talk about a lot of the operations that were taking place and what was going on around the same time with Malcolm X being assassinated in 65 and Martin Luther King being assassinated in 68 and how it all comes together. We're going to talk about the Nigerian Civil War. We're going to talk about Egypt and Nasser and Israel and France and Britain clashing with Nasser and what happened and why. We're going to talk about Marxist regimes and CIA coups and counter coups. Okay, it's going to be interesting. We're going to talk about Angola and the Congo and Rhodesia and it changing its name to Zimbabwe and so on and so forth. Okay, so be sure to watch the next video. But before we end this video, I want to point out that I was fumed during the course of this video. I have 23 witnesses on record to the psychological operation against me. Okay, How can you sabotage people all over the world, then say, let's compare genes? Is that something that some group of people with superior genes would do? Probably not, right? Okay.